My daughter a few minutes ago.
Oh, good.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Ellsworth City Council, Tuesday, January 21st. All councilors are present. The city manager is not. He is away today, so be back Thursday. Agenda item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number 3, rules of order. The City Council runs with Robert's Rules of Order, or operates under Robert's Rules of Order, except for those items that are set at the organizational meeting in November of each year. Item 4, adoption of the Ellsworth City Council minutes for the following meeting: January 16th, 2024, regular meeting, January 7th, 2025, special meeting. Do you have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
I wasn't at the 16th meeting, so
Abstaining?
but I'll vote for the 7th.
For the 7th, all right. You all set with that, Ebony? Just, sorry, I forgot to get a pen. Item number 5, presentation of awards. Mike Harris? Oh, he's not here tonight. All right. Yeah. Well, I will read this for Mike. It's for 20 years of service with the City of Ellsworth. The City of Ellsworth proudly presents this certificate of service to Michael Harris in recognition of 20 years of service in the wastewater department for the City of Ellsworth and combined service as Public Works Superintendent. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the City of Ellsworth. Ebony or Sue, someone? Thank you. And proclamation of Community Risk Reduction Week, January 20th to 26th, 2025. Whereas every 23 seconds, a fire department in the United States responds to a fire somewhere in the nation. Whereas fires nationally were responsible for 3,670 civilian deaths, and 79% of these fatalities in 2023 occurred in the home. Whereas fires nationally were responsible for 13,350 civilian injuries, and 77% of these injuries in 2023 were also related to fires in the home. Whereas an estimated $23.2 billion in property damage nationally occurred as a result of fire in 2023. Whereas wildland-urban interface, WUI-related fires remain a concern nationwide with multi-billion-dollar losses as a result in 2023. Whereas the fire service responds to a growing number of medical calls for service, surpassing 80% of total call volume in some jurisdictions. Whereas community risk reduction is a data-informed process to identify and prioritize local risks, followed by integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce their occurrence and impact. Whereas the value of community support from local, state, and national partners to address community risk is recognized to meet the demands on paid, combination, and volunteer members of the fire service. Whereas the goal of community risk reduction is to reduce the occurrence and impact of emergency events for both community members and emergency responders through deliberate action in the areas of the 5 E's of education, engineering, enforcement, emergency response, and economic incentive. Whereas most fire-related and many medical calls for service are preventable, with the 5 E's performed as part of an integrated community risk reduction program. Whereas Monday, January 20th, 2025 is Martin Luther King Day and is nationally recognized as a National Day of Service and an opportunity for communities to reduce the risk in their community through a series of educational and other programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the week of January 20th, 2025 to January 26th, 2025 be designated as CRR Week, a grassroots initiative of fire service professionals across the nation to raise awareness of the importance of CRR in the fire service community and an opportunity to make communities safer. Signed, me. right. Item number 6, City Manager's Report. Charlie wrote one up for me to read to you, and I will tell you that it's 5 pages long. It's big type, but it's 5 pages long. All right, Deputy City Manager announcement. After an extensive national search of around 200 applicants and scores of in-depth interviews, Charlie is thrilled to announce the appointment of Sarah Devlin as Ellsworth's new Deputy City Manager, effective February 10th, 2025. Sarah is an Ellsworth resident who brings extensive expertise in community planning, organizational leadership, and infrastructure development to support the city's operations and strategic goals. Sarah comes to us from the Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System, where she served as Executive Director. Her career includes leadership roles with the Maine Turnpike Authority and the Greater Portland Council of Governments. She has a proven track record in grant acquisition and in building strong relations with key stakeholders. Sarah shares a deep connection to Ellsworth, rooted in her family's history and her time at Branch Lake. She's eager to collaborate with staff, residents, and businesses to strengthen partnerships and support sustainable growth while preserving Ellsworth's unique character. We're thrilled to welcome Sarah to our team and are confident her leadership will help shape a bright future for our community. Heart of Ellsworth event. The Heart of Ellsworth is inviting the community to their 2025 annual meeting on February 5th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at 16 State Street, sponsored by First National Bank. This year's meeting is extra special as the organization celebrates 10 years of revitalizing downtown Ellsworth. The event will feature a fun scavenger hunt through their new makerspace and co-working space, a brief presentation from their board and staff, and an opportunity to honor founding members Phyllis Young and Beth Bendel, who will be granted emeritus status for their incredible contributions. Attendees can also learn about Heart of Ellsworth's 2024 accomplishments, including their recent Main Street America designation, and hear about exciting plans for 2025. This is a great opportunity for community members to get involved and help shape the future of our vibrant downtown. The event is free, open to all, and includes light refreshments. I encourage everyone to attend and show their support for this vital organization. Community Development Block Grant. On a related note for downtown, our team is excited to announce the launch of a facade improvement grant program for downtown businesses and commercial property owners. This initiative, funded through a community development block grant, offers matching funds to help revitalize building exteriors and enhance the charm of downtown Ellsworth. The program provides a 3-to-1 match for private investments with grants of up to $25,000 per project. Eligible activities include historic facade improvements like brick repointing, entrance upgrades, and exterior lighting, signage, and improved accessibility. Applications are due by March 14th, 2025 at 12:30 p.m. and will be reviewed by an advisory committee of city staff, business owners, experts, and community representatives. Interested property owners should visit ellsworthmaine.gov/facade to review the guidelines, map of the program area, and application materials. This program is a great opportunity to restore the aesthetic appeal of our downtown and support local businesses in making meaningful improvements. I encourage eligible property owners to apply and take advantage of this exciting initiative. City clerk and tax offices temporarily relocating to second floor in February. I'd like to inform everyone that the city clerk and tax offices will temporarily relocate to the second floor auditorium in February, while the first floor counter area undergoes remodeling. To facilitate the move, these offices will be closed on Friday, January 31st, and will reopen in their temporary location on Monday, February 3rd. All services will remain fully available during this time, and visitors can access the temporary offices via the elevator or stairs in the entrance hall. We anticipate the upgrades will be completed by the end of February and appreciate everyone's patience as we work to improve these spaces to better serve our community. Organization funding requests. It's hard to believe, but budget season is fast approaching. A quick reminder to organizations submitting funding applications. The deadline is Friday, February 14th, 2025 at 12:30 p.m. To ensure your application is successfully submitted, we strongly recommend delivering it in person to the Finance Department at City Hall. If you mail your application, confirm receipt with a reply mail. For applications sent by a U.S. Postal Service, follow up by phone to verify delivery. Clear and detailed requests are critical. Focus on special activities, provide cost breakdowns, and outline measurable outcomes. Remember, applications received after the deadline may not be considered, and the responsibility for ensuring submission lies with each organization. Budget workshops will follow in March and April with dates posted online. With dates posted online at City Hall and in local newspapers. Questions? Contact our Finance Director, Nate Moore, at 207-669-6624 or Ashley Brown at 669-6602. Fire and Ice Festival. And lastly, on a fun note, I'm really excited about the upcoming inaugural Fire and Ice Festival taking place Friday, January 31st through Sunday, February 2nd. This winter celebration includes a film festival, winter market, and fireworks display, offering something for everyone to enjoy. The Grand will host the Banff Center Mountain Film Festival World Tour with screenings Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 2 p.m. Across the river at Woodlawn, visitors can enjoy an indoor winter craft and farmers market on Saturday from 10 to 1, along with ice skating and sledding if the weather allows. Finally, on Saturday at 5 p.m., there will be fireworks display launched from the Ellsworth High School softball field, visible from many locations around town, including Knowlton Park and the track. We invite residents and visitors to join us for this exciting new event and celebrate winter in Ellsworth. Committee reports. Item number 7. Does anyone have any reports from their committees they're participating on?
Recreation Commission met last week and this morning to talk about various recreation activities. As always, the public is welcome to attend. They're great fun, and it's usually a small group, so we have a lot of good conversation. Just to add to the Fire and Ice Festival, it's going to be great. There's going to be a planning meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at the Moore Center. That's for businesses or folks that want to get involved in some way. This is the first year, so again, it's a pilot program, but local businesses, we're asking them to, put a special on if they're a restaurant, or do something fiery or icy or both. So if you're interested, also Heart of Ellsworth and the Chamber are also helping to coordinate that, so reach out to either of those groups or Christmas in Ellsworth, or just come to the meeting tomorrow. The Rec Commission also went forward with purchasing, I don't want to call it an ice rink, but it's sort of an answer to the issues we've been having with the weather for the last few years, trying to get the ice rink back up and running and it being too wet or too warm or too snowy. So the Commission is doing a pilot program this year where it's buying something like a 16 by 16 foot series of panels, which are made for indoor or warm weather skating. There's some sort of a plastic composite where you can actually use your ice skates and skate around. So we'll be putting that up somewhere in town. We're figuring out where, and asking people to use it when it's set up and let us know what you think. And if it works well and we love it, we can expand upon it, make it bigger and more fun.
Nice. That's a great. Any other? Okay. Item number 8, citizens' comments. This is the item on the agenda where we ask people if they'd like to come up and speak to the council. We ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. We also ask that you please respect the council and the work that the council does, and keep your comments to the council and pertaining to council business.
Good evening, councilors. John Lenahan, 157 Shore Road in Ellsworth. I have spoken at past council meetings about my desire to educate voters on the kind of candidates I believe should be on this council. To lower our city property taxes, we must have councilors who vote to reduce spending and limit the size and scope of government as our founding fathers originally intended. I have been told that by doing this, I'm breaking the City Council rules of Order 21B. I do not interpret what I am doing as breaking the city's rules of order. If the city and the City Council believe I am in violation of that rule, I would like to state that I am violating it on purpose right now for my uninterrupted allotted time. I'm going to continue to advocate for some members of this board to be removed at the next election. I would also like to say that the city's rule against politicking and political activities is unconstitutional. The city has argued that public comment in a council meeting is a limited public forum. While that is true, once the council opened this meeting to citizens for comment, that designated the meeting as a limited public forum. I'd like to quote from the case the city cited, Perry Education Association versus Perry Local Educators Association, in its letter to me. The Constitution forbids a state to enforce certain exclusions from a forum generally open to the public, even if it was not required to create the forum in the first place. The opinion actually mentioned public meetings as an example of this kind of forum, and then states, although a state is not required to indefinitely retain the open character of the facility, as long as it does so, it is bound to same standards as apply in a traditional public forum. Reasonable time, place, and manner regulations are permissible, and a content-based prohibition must be narrowly drawn to effectuate a compelling state interest. Therefore, the council can only institute time, place, and manner restrictions, and these restrictions must be content neutral. Banning all political speech is a content-based restriction and is unconstitutional in this limited public forum. It is especially clearly unconstitutional when it is political speech that is directed pertinent to the council's activities and me, a citizen, directly criticizing my elected leaders' voting records. Therefore, I recommend that the 3 big spending, big government councilors up for re-election this November be soundly removed from office. They are Democrats John Stein, Rhino Republicans Michelle Beal, and Tammy Moat. In your letter to me, the city said the purpose of this content-based restriction was to not violate Maine statute, but that is clearly false. They cited 21A MRSA Section 682, which states that certain activities are prohibited on Election Day. Early voting is not the same as Election Day, so the statute does not apply to my political influence occurring outside of November 5th. Even then, I am free to discuss this council's suitability or non-suitability for office. The council has overstepped with its unconstitutional rule, and I will continue to advocate
The 3
for
minutes is
change
up. Thank
I
you very
see
much.
fit for the
The
council.
3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the respect that you give to this council and the work that this council does.
Thank you. I appreciate you respecting the First
Yeah,
Amendment
that's
Constitution.
enough. You're done. 3 minutes is up. Item number 9, council comments.
Oh, there he is. I was just gonna.
You missed it.
You missed it.
I know, I'm sorry. Had a basketball game, it went late.
And I'm sorry, before we go into number 9, is there anyone else that would like to speak? I apologize for that. I just assumed there was one person. Did anyone else like to speak for council comments? Citizen comments? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, now, go ahead.
I had a number of folks reach out to me walking around downtown, and then I ran into Mike on the street who mentioned that the 2 cities' sidewalk plow scrapers are down for the count. They're in the workshop or need spare parts, so they're not working. That's why many apologies from the city side that those machines are both down. So they've assured me they'll get them back up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah, we'll be up tomorrow.
Oh, even better. That's all I
Thank
know,
you.
so if anybody has any questions.
Just so make sure everybody hears me correctly. So yeah, the city sidewalk plows, both of them broke down. And actually they tried to use the snow blower from wastewater and that broke too, so. At least 2 of them I think will be up tomorrow, so we'll be out tomorrow clearing all the sidewalks and everything. So apologies to people that could not access the sidewalks, and we'll get them up and run them and clear them as soon as we can.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just to follow up on that, this is, I think, the second snowstorm of the season, and they fall on holidays. And just noting that the crews were out on Sunday night into Monday, Martin Luther King Day. And we acknowledge that we wish we could time those snowstorms better for them, but here we are, and genuine appreciation for the work that they do.
Absolutely,
We
absolutely.
got the roads cleared quick.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. New business, number 10, public hearing and action on the application for renewal for the following license. Says, ETC LLC DBA Dion's, 35 Eastwood Lane for renewal of a city Class C victualler liquor and state liquor license. Sanjeeva, and I am so going to mess this up, Sanjeeva Abhayasakara, DBA Sarandib, 2 State Street for renewal of a city Class C license, victualler liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant, Class 3 and 4 malt and Venice liquor license. Hancock County Auditorium Association, DBA The Grand, 165 Main Street for renewal of a city Class B license, victualler liquor and amusement, and renewal of a state other auditorium theater, Class 3 and 4 malt and Venice liquor license. Colonial 1 LLC, DBA Colonial Inn, 321 High Street for renewal of a city lodging house license. So we'd like to do the public hearing for all of these at one time. So the public hearing is open. Would anyone like to speak on these licenses? Okay. Public hearing is closed. And you sent us an email. All of these have been set to go. What would the council like to do?
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? New business, this was license taken separately, Acadia Village Resort Homeowners Association, DBA Village, Acadia Village Resort, 50 Resort Way for a new city lodging license, and it's my understanding that there's 65 of them that will be acting as hotels now rather than condos. So that's the reason for the new license. Oh. The public hearing is open. Would anyone like to speak on this license?
I would just say that I don't,
Thank you.
my name's Paul Sala, and I'm the general manager at the property. I don't know how it is that we don't have a city license already. We do have something with the state, and to fulfill a requirement for Booking.com, we need to have a license that they can hold and see, and so that's why we've applied for this license.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. The hearing is closed, sorry. Thank you.
Move
What would-
approval.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? Discussion? I'm sorry. God, hold on. Gotta get back in order here. Discussion.
This is the second time we've heard that there was a housing establishment without a license. If you recall last year, the sanctuary as well. I just wonder if there might be more housing, hotel type establishments that maybe have gone under the radar like this one, that we could maybe, if there's a way to just go through and double check. That's a question for a different time, but I just putting it out there. 'Cause
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item 11, council order number 012500, public hearing and action on amendments to the Ellsworth Public Library personal ordinance. Sarah?
So I don't even know if I should really be here tonight. This isn't technically an ordinance. It's approved by the Board of Trustees. So with your blessing, doesn't have to be an actual vote, apparently. We're adding the paid family medical leave and the benefit changes that the city ordinance added last month, the month before. So we have to update ours.
So I do have a question.
Yes.
So,
I don't know if I can answer it.
so your personnel ordinance, is it, do you have an employee association or something that you work with on that, or how
There
does that work?
used to be an employee association, but it hasn't been active since I have been here.
Okay.
So this was just adding any changes that were made to the city ordinance.
So we may want to talk to Carrie about, if you have a separate association, it isn't an ordinance, but an agreement, then that would be treated more like our union agreements do.
Yes.
But if you're not different, then maybe we can just fix the personnel ordinance so that it agrees with the things that you do. We can have separate sections, and then it's all done at once when there's any changes, and
Perfect.
you won't have to worry about it. But since this has been advertised as a public hearing, I do need to open the public hearing, which I will do right now. And would anyone else like to speak on this or ask any questions about the library? Okay. Public hearing is closed. Thanks.
Yes, but whenever,
Council, do you have
Talk about it
questions
whenever.
for Sarah? Or? All right, keep those up.
thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry to take up your valuable time.
No, it's okay. What,
I don't know if it actually needs a
I
vote.
don't know either,
I mean,
'cause
we
it-
could approve the agreement, because it's not an ordinance. It
Yeah.
doesn't have a chapter in it and such, so. And it's mirroring.
And it's mirroring, there's no changes, so
Right.
maybe just no decision on this, or what would you like to do, or just approve these changes? And
Is there any harm in just approving
Not at
what we
all.
read?
Nope.
Not at all.
I approve of it.
Does that make, I would think it would make their side flow a little easier if we approved it, or, I mean, there's quite a bit of work here.
I don't think there's any harm in us voting
I
to
don't-
approve
I
it.
don't see
and then
it's-
if it
it's up to
came
you.
up down the road, we were wrong and it needed to be approved, we had it covered,
Yep.
assuming we approve it.
I just need a motion.
I will make a motion to approve, as necessary, amendments to the Ellsworth Public Library Personnel Ordinance to reflect changes made to the City of Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34 Personnel Ordinance.
Second?
Discussion?
Could we change the wording to agreement, because it really isn't a city ordinance? Would you?
I would be happy to adopt that friendly amendment to move to adopt the agreement. I guess we're calling it an agreement. Move to adopt the agreement of the amendments to the Ellsworth Public Library Personnel Ordinance to reflect changes made to the City of Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34 Personnel Ordinance. Does that sound right, Tammy?
It does, and if you go to this last page, you can even see that this was all, like, it's been approved by the Library Board of Trustees, yeah. I'm more comfortable with the agreement than ordinance, because it's not even posted online for the public.
Yeah, it's not an
either.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Second to the
Okay.
friendly amendment.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 12, Council Order 012501, public hearing and action on the request of the city planner to authorize the city manager to sign a purchase and sale agreement with a goal closing date of March 31st, 2025 for the purchase of 279.1 acres for the Branch Lake expansion at the purchase price of $185,000 to be paid for through Lands for Maine Future and Land and Water Conservation Fund grants.
Hi, Matt Williams, City Planner. This is really a continuation of our discussion last meeting or November meeting. Can't remember when we accepted the grant funds. I think the November meeting. And the purchase sale agreement's been drafted. It's been reviewed by both our attorneys and the seller's attorneys. I think it's pretty standard. There's still a clause, identifying that if for whatever reason the grant funding falls through, the purchase will be delayed or not happen. It talks about how the environmental review's been completed and the property is satisfactory to the city's liking. So yeah, it's pretty standard, just need permission for Charlie to sign it, or if you have any questions.
Do you have any questions of Matt?
You said in case the grant funding doesn't come through, is there a time or how far?
I have no reason to believe it won't come through, it is just a protection.
Assuming it does and the purchase sale agreement, there's no other issues with it, what will be the timeline of purchase?
I don't know. It
Well,
depends
so
on what the issue is,
closing's
but-
set for the 31st of March this
Yes.
year, so a little over 2 months.
But I have no reason to believe there'll be issues with the grant funding. The only due diligence that's left is the title work, and I have the freshly written legal description of the property given to me today. So the lawyers now have that, and they'll finish up the title work soon.
Councilor Allen?
First, I'd like to fire a shot into you. You're the only financial transaction on this agenda, and you wrecked it.
Thank you.
I could have stood up and said how wonderful this agenda was, that we're not spending the taxpayers' money, and you put this in there, and I know it's a grant, but you could have moved it out, and we would have had it beautiful, and I wouldn't be fighting. So, having said that, I know I've asked you this question before. I get nervous about grants.
Yeah.
I call it magic money. And I just want to make sure that this grant funding is coming from state or federal monies, that will not affect our local budget.
That's correct, yes. The full
Could you say that
purchase-
louder?
The full purchase price of the property is grant funded through state and federal sources. It does not come from local taxpayer general fund money.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we have a motion?
Is it a public hearing?
God. I am like 0 for 5.
I'm gonna
on
zap
this.
you.
I know, it's gonna zap me again. I'm sorry, this is a public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this or ask Matt questions on this item. Sure, you gotta come to the podium though. Thank you.
I just want to congratulate the city and our city planner for securing the funds for this extraordinary enhancement of the public forest. It has a major impact. It will have a major impact on the quality of our drinking water and on the recreational opportunities for our community. So thank you.
And if I may, I'll second that.
Yeah.
I love that property. I love the forest that we have now in the Branch Lake, and I'm very excited about this additional purchase. Anyone else like to speak? We'll close the public hearing.
Motion to authorize the city manager to sign a purchase and sale agreement with a goal closing date of March 31st, 2025 for the purchase of 279.1 acres for the Branch Lake expansion at the purchase price of $185,000 to be paid through Lands for Maine Future Fund and Land and Water Conservation Fund grants.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt. Great job. Item 13, council order number 012502, public hearing and action on the request of the Arbor Commission for amendments to the City of Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 43, Tree Ordinance. Hi.
Hi, Casey Hansen.
Oh, please do introduce yourself.
Casey Hansen, Ellsworth.
Recovering counselor.
Unrelated, I want to thank you all for the hard work that I know that you do, despite the heckling that you sometimes get. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, I'm just gonna, I know you have a copy of this new ordinance, and you've probably had a chance to read it, so I'm gonna try to just present it really quickly. As you know, there was a tree ordinance that was adopted in 1991 that's pretty minimal and was also largely ignored for many years. And in the fall of 2023, we brought it back and reassembled the Arbor Commission that was designated in the original ordinance. And when we decided to reform the Arbor Commission, one of the goals was to look at this tree ordinance and update it and make it more relevant and helpful. And so, as you've all heard me say before, the Arbor Commission is amazing, filled with amazing and knowledgeable people, several of whom worked on this ordinance. So I want to thank the people on the Arbor Commission who did all this work. Also thanks to Matt and to the Planning Department for their input. So I'm just going to give a quick overview, and there are actually 2 friendly amendments that the Arbor Commission has decided to add to these, as we all kind of went through it with a fine-tooth comb over the weekend. So basically, here's the new tree ordinance. It has, you know, your basic purpose and your definitions, and then Article 3 is to define and clarify the tree warden position that we vote in every year, but we've never really clarified what that is. Article 4 is the Arbor Commission, what its goals are, the number of people on it. Then Article 5 is requirements for permits for anyone who wants to do any kind of work on city trees, other than work that's being done by the tree warden or people designated by the tree warden. Then the next article is Article 6, which just specifies that we would follow the American National Standards Institute specification for pruning and shade tree care. And that's just a national organization that gives guidelines for planting and care that are used by tree experts across the country. Article 7 is, sorry, that one I sort of skipped. Article 7 is about, the relationship between the tree ordinance and the forest management plan, which is a different document, and the planning board. And then Article 8 is defining protections for trees that are on city property. And then number 9 just points out that violations can result in fines according to what the forest management plan will be. So the 2 things that we think should be changed before I take your input and answer your questions are Article 6, the ANSI contract specifications. I had to be like, what is ANSI? So that's the American National Standards Institute, and we just think that ought to be clarified under Article 2 definitions, just what that is. So we'd recommend to change that. And then there is a typo on Article 7, 7.2. It says landscaping plans for public spaces, but it's not landscaping plans for public spaces. That's landscaping plans that go to the planning board. So it's for private spaces, not public spaces. So that's just an error and needs to be removed.
Public and for private? Swap out public with private?
I would just remove it completely because it's just landscaping plans that have been submitted for approval by the Ellsworth Planning Board. Questions or thoughts?
So the first one about just writing out what ANSI stands for,
Yep.
is that, could we also just do that at the beginning of 6.1, right? The American National something, whatever, and then in parentheses, ANSI? Would that
Yes.
work for you guys?
Yep.
That way you don't have to add an article to definite.
Yeah, sure.
What does it stand for?
It's American National Standards Institute.
Chair Beal, I have one other thought. So in violations and penalties, it says violations of this ordinance may result in fines and penalties. And then it says basically if there is a penalty, that will be the replacement cost. Is that more or less what that's getting at?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Sorry, so one says, this, violations may result in fines or penalties, and then it kind of, 9.2 says, if there is a penalty, if there's any damage to a public tree, the penalty shall be the replacement value of the tree. Is that more or less what the goal of is, that one?
Yes, I think, right?
Correct.
I think one suggestion I would have is, because it's a land use, I interpret this as a land use ordinance in part, because it's regulating, like it's not under the land use ordinance, but it's regulating land use. You might want to just add the more general penalty provision that we use in our more, general land use ordinances. that this basically, anyone, violation of this ordinance can be enforced through Title 30A MRS 4452, which is the land use enforcement statute that the state has created for municipalities. And just by referencing that, I think it would broaden the city's authority to bring any enforcement if it's necessary, and it allows the city to recuperate costs if it's successful. So not only would you be getting the replacement value of the trees, but all the costs that might go into, having to fix the tree, plant it, and then if the violator is not cooperative, hiring a lawyer and all those costs. Plus there'd be penalties, and it's just, it gives the city more flexibility for enforcement if it needs it. Which I know the goal of this ordinance is not to go enforcing against, people, but if we're gonna have it, I would
Yeah.
advise to have it.
Did you want to say, Mary has something to say about that?
Thanks for that. Are you suggesting that go for 9.1, which would cover everything rather than the specific item?
Yeah, I
9.2?
think you could, or you could just do that for 9.1, and then 9.2 you could amend to say, yeah, I would keep it as broad as possible, but you could say penalties may include the replacement value of trees, but not limited to. Just so people understand, at the very least, you're paying to fix a tree, to replant it.
So if we reference the MRS item in 9.1, then it would cover sort of everything, right? Because that's the more general item, and then say the penalty shall include but not be limited to
Yes.
replacement value.
I think that would,
Item
yeah.
9.2.
Yep.
Okay, sounds friendly. Helpful.
I speak for the trees, so.
We need a Lorax reference now, yes.
Just to keep it consistent with all of the wording in here, you do have in 2.6, shade trees upon and along town roads. It should be city roads.
Oh, yeah. Good catch. Which number was that?
2.6.
Into the second sentence, Casey.
Yep, thanks.
So I have a question on 7.2. I was okay when it was public spaces, but when you're saying that landscaping plans for private spaces submitted for approval by the Ellsworth Planning Board shall include a tree preservation plan, do they have to do that now, Matt? Because I think we're superseding our other ordinance.
Yeah, I don't know if that wording was necessarily in there at the time, but, so the Arbor Commission is gonna have a representative reviewing plans through the technical review process. And then we don't currently require a tree preservation plan, but it could be something that we include in the land use ordinance later, so it might not make sense here. It would just be out of the chapter 56 when we do amendments to that instead.
So I don't mind, I think it's a great idea to have the plans be approved by a tree warden, but to order through this ordinance, something that we would do through our land use ordinances, I just don't think that's appropriate for here.
Yeah, because if it's not a requirement
Right.
under the land use ordinance, then this basically becomes optional. And then if I'm any developer, I would be like, well, I'm not gonna provide a landscaping plan, otherwise I'll be subjected to the tree warden. So it might disincentivize people to do that.
And then, yeah, we got rid of public, but just kept spaces, because planning board may review public spaces in some instances, so just spaces in general. I think just landscaping plans submitted for approval by the Ellsworth Planning Board, getting rid of all that. was good.
And then just like that?
Yeah, I think, I don't remember if it was somewhere else, but just the language that the tree warden or the Arbor Commission would participate in the technical review process, planning board projects was like good for now, and then to add an additional
Yeah, and I think that
discussion would be to chapter 56 more than
was
likely.
under the Arbor Commission thing, that's this.
Yeah, so that,
Okay.
Can you say that out loud, what you just made that change? 'Cause-
Yeah, so
we didn't really
Matt,
change it.
Matt is suggesting, or you and Matt are suggesting, instead of saying landscaping plans submitted for approval by the Ellsworth Planning Board, shall include a tree preservation plan reviewed and approved by the tree warden. The recommendation is to take that out, so landscaping plans submitted for approval, so it doesn't actually say anything then.
Right, you remove 7.2.
So you just remove 7.2 in its
Eventually add it to
entirety,
56.
with the idea that then, when we review chapter 56, the Arbor Commission will try to stay involved to make sure that chapter 56 talks about that, because that is one of the things that we do care about, places not just being clear-cut for building. Okay, does that,
But that should go through the
do the
planning
other
board
members of the
process.
Arbor Commission feel okay about that?
As long as it goes into chapter 56.
Yeah, yeah, we'll stay on that. Other, oh, Steve?
So this has become a little bit clouded, and I just would ask, could you just speak to the spirit of this as opposed to all of the legal jargon? What's the spirit of the intent?
Yeah, so the spirit of the intent is basically the trees of Ellsworth are an important resource. As Tabitha said in her thing that I have folded in half here. I'm just going to say her thing because it's good. An updated ordinance would bring measurable benefits to the city by reducing stormwater runoff, improving air quality, and supporting biodiversity. Numerous studies have demonstrated the economic and environmental advantages of protecting and planting trees in urban settings, including boosting property values and enhancing public health. So basically, A, making our city more beautiful, and B, making it more resilient and healthy. And so the spirit of the ordinance was basically to set things in place so that the trees of Ellsworth are protected and cared for. Yeah.
Thank you.
And as I said at the beginning, we've had a tree warden, at least all the time I was on city council. Every year we voted for the tree warden, and we sort of chuckled about it because we didn't know what the heck that person did. So we're just trying to be, like, it's a real job, and it is actually important. So we're just trying to bulk it up and make it more substantial or mean something. Yeah.
If I could follow, so it sounds like kind of the intent of the ordinance is, one, to help us manage city-owned trees, public trees, which makes a lot of sense. But then eventually, if the land use ordinance is amended to require certain types of tree plans or landscaping plans, then the tree warden's role would also would expand to reviewing those on private development and to advance those same goals. Does
Yeah.
that sound right?
And that does sound right, and I think that will all just be defined during this chapter 56
Update.
renovation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's a good question, Steve.
To speak to it a little further, I'm all for trees, but I just don't want to cause anyone more hurdles to jump through. Again, I'm all for the trees, but I'm struggling with creating one more hurdle. And it looks like that's
Hurdle for whom?
for anyone building a house or development or what have you. If I understand this right, this could gain some teeth through chapter 56.
Well, I think this won't. Chapter 56 will be its own teeth in a variety of ways that we zone. I think this doesn't, other than for the city itself, doesn't really make a hurdle for anybody else, especially if we take out 7 point whatever. It's more a matter of clarifying what the Arbor Commission does and what the tree warden does, and those are all volunteer positions. Well, the tree warden isn't, but the Arbor Commission is all volunteer.
I'll add to that, Steve. So chapter 56 already requires landscaping plans and buffering requirements for developers as is. So really the work that the Arbor Commission does should probably help clarify and give them more guidelines on what to do, making their job a bit easier when presenting those plans. If the Arbor Commission knows specific tree types or planting types that are beneficial for development or for this area. It's less about me looking at a plan and being like, well, this looks fine to me, but I don't know anything about trees, and they plant the trees and then they die because they're not the right type of tree. And it saves them money in the long run because they're being given expert advice really on how to properly execute on some of these requirements that already exist.
What,
Yeah.
one step further about that chapter. How does that apply to Joe and Mary building a house in Ellsworth?
If you're building a single-family home, Chapter 56 really doesn't apply.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Does anyone have any questions?
Good job, Michelle.
I know, the first one on there, right?
Yeah, so my concern really is, how is this gonna affect my crew's ability to do the work that they need to do? Sometimes when we're ditching, trees have to be removed. Sometimes there are trees in the right of way that are blocking sight distance and have to be removed. So, yeah, this worries me that we would have to go through some process to remove trees that need to be removed, so. I don't know if there can be a city exemption to that, I don't know.
They're actually, so.
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But just to answer your question, basically, the tree warden is someone who works with you. You say to him or her, I'm gonna cut down that tree because blah, 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 and they're gonna say, yeah. So you don't need to do anything extra. There's no permit for things that are
Okay.
done under the purview of the,
Yeah, no.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that that was
Yeah.
clear, because, you know, in the summertime especially, we do a lot of work, and sometimes it involves taking trees and chipping them and moving them out and all that stuff, so I just want to make sure that our workflow isn't negatively impacted on that front.
No, it just means communicating with whoever the tree warden is.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a specific exception.
What number is that?
I thought it was, but I
That
just couldn't find it.
is-
5.5. I thought there was, I just couldn't find it. Does anyone else have any questions?
Just for the public.
That's a public hearing.
Just wanted to-
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Your turn.
I just wanted to read that 5.5, because
Okay.
we were talking about it. The exceptions are any tree work done on public trees by volunteers or city employees under the supervision of the tree warden shall not require a permit. Then there's more about utility companies. But maybe that could be helpful as well. There could be Arbor Commission volunteers, or there could just be helpful information that comes from the tree warden that could help Public Works down the line.
That's really the goal. The Arbor Commission is filled with all kinds of people who know so much and are ready and willing to be helpful in any way they can, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if I may, because sometimes Bangor Hydro, Versant comes along and then they just start swiping at people's trees on their lawns, and it would really be great to have them have someone that they can speak to about, what can I do about this tree now? You know, should I cut it down, or should I do, you know, I
Yeah.
think would be very happy to see that happening for the public.
Can the public contact the tree warden directly?
Sure, we want that. Yeah.
Is there already a contact?
No.
We haven't hired one yet.
Well, they would have to get a hold of.
I think Charlie's
Charlie.
still the tree warden.
They definitely can just.
So
contact
sure they
me.
can. And the public can definitely come to any Arbor Commission meeting, which is the first Monday of the month at 8:15 a.m. We would love to have anybody come and make comments.
I just want to speak and I think support the Arbor Commission in this work as a forester and a lover of trees. Sometimes you cut them, and Maine's economy is based on natural resource sector, including forestry, and sometimes they add so much to quality of life in a community. And just having this extra step where there's a consideration of, does the tree need to be cut down? Is there another way to address the issue? Particularly, I noticed in 4.4 that the Arbor Commission is going to maintain a list of the city's heritage and ecologically significant trees, and just have a plan in place on how they should be cared for and preserved. Sometimes trees need to be cut down, and that's okay. But sometimes just that extra thought that goes into, is it necessary, or are there other ways to address the purpose that we're trying to achieve in that case? So thank you to the Arbor Commission. This is nice to see. Much more complete than the half-page
Yes.
early 1991 version of the ordinance.
I just want to thank you for doing what I was doing before. This is really awesome. And to further push the update, trees are so important to us here in Ellsworth and in Maine. It is what makes us the most, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places in the world to exist. Without protections for our trees, we risk losing all of that and essentially creating a lot more work for our public works team and a lot less desirable property values for our homes. We really want to do whatever we can to protect and preserve our trees. And I think updating this ordinance was our first goal here from the Arbor Commission. So thank you for considering it.
So says the arborist.
Yes. Well, a lot of work went into this, so.
Yeah.
All right, can I just summarize quickly the changes?
Please.
I know I'm not allowed to make a motion, but you know I like to do that, so.
We miss you.
It hurts. Okay, so as written, the changes are in 2.6, we're going to change the word town to city. Then we're good for a while. In 6.1, we are going to clarify that ANSI is the American National Standards Institute and define that. We are going to eliminate 7.2 completely. And we are going to make 9.1 say all the letters and numbers that Patrick said, that hopefully he will send to me.
Yep, you can do that.
And 9.2, we're going to change calculated as, no. Shall include but not limited to. And that's it.
Counselor Howell?
I guess I need to share personal experience and tell me how this plays into it. I received a state permit from the state of Maine for an entrance on the Bangor Road in Ellsworth. And part of that condition of that permit was that they insisted that I mow the trees down in the ditch from this point to that point as a condition of a state permit. How does this play into, and it was over site distance, how does this play into a situation like that? And this isn't, I'm asking for other people, not me, but that was a condition that we mow those trees down in that ditch.
Yeah, so I mean, the project you're speaking of didn't have to go to the planning board, so the review was probably much quicker. But in this term, it's probably something that goes to the tree warden, at least as I understand it being written. You'd go to the tree warden with that permit from the state saying they're telling me if I want this opening, I have to take down trees on my property, and then I'm guessing the tree warden would be like, well, the project meets all other requirements, so, go ahead and move forward.
So there's an extra step.
Maybe, but it would probably be just more of a communication between the code office and the tree warden. The code office would probably send the tree warden your project to review and then get feedback back, and you'd still have one channel of communication.
And it bogs that process down.
Probably not significantly.
Well, you got one agency saying one thing, and I'm for trees, don't get me wrong, I've spent some serious money on landscape before, but I just struggling with that.
We can't supersede the state in there right away, can we?
Well, no, but the state would be recommending that they remove the trees to get the entrance, so I don't know if it's really superseding, but if the state requires something, I'd feel like our staff would just be like, okay, you can.
Yeah, I mean,
move
if they
forward with the
require
project.
something with a
Yeah.
permit, we can't say, no, that's not true. I mean, we have to go by what the state, it's there right away.
Yeah, I don't really want to get too deep into it, but yeah, in theory, we could say, well, that's fine, but then you can't, like, this entrance has to be somewhere else or something like that. We could
Oh, I
suggest
get what you're
that,
saying.
but, again, I don't think that is really the attitude of the
No.
staff here.
I got you. No, I understand.
But
Thank
to
you. Sorry.
speak, what if it was on a city entrance? Same situation, right?
Well, and that would be slightly different where, there's somebody with the authority to give those permits. So for road opening permits, currently our Public Works Department has the authority to give that. So even if the tree warden thought there should be something done, ultimately there's already an expressed authority in the Public Works Department. So it's more of a recommendation, it feels like, for things to consider. So like Code or Public Works would reach out to the tree warden, show him a plan, this is what's happening. And then, if staff disagreed on what was reasonable or not, ultimately authority is still with a body that it already exists with. It's adding more nuanced considerations, I guess, for the environment, but as it currently sits, no authority, not a lot of authority.
Thank you.
And I want to speak to that, Steve, if I may. It is true that we aren't necessarily stacked with the staff that we need quite yet to fully implement our ordinance, but I do think that this is the first step we get in order to get closer to prioritizing urban forestry for Ellsworth. So we are kind of laying out the groundwork for that, and then as hopefully we get a Parks and Recreation Department and a tree warden within that Parks and Recreation Department, then we already have this ordinance in place that they can build off of. But I do understand that our staff situation right now is limited, and this could put a hindrance on it, but there's the hopes that as we grow, we have this.
I have a question for Mike. I seem to recall that a member of Public Works is an arborist, and we're working towards getting what we need.
Caleb Pelletier is.
So to the points that have been raised, we're almost there with a arborist and/or fire, so that it won't be Charlie, it'll be somebody within the department. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, so Caleb is going to, yes, he's trying to achieve his arbor certification to become a certified arborist. So
Okay.
that's correct. So the piece of that that's not connected is just because he has a certificate doesn't mean he's the tree warden. Nobody's designated anybody yet for the tree warden. And so if it's Caleb, it's Caleb, and that's all well and good. I just know that it's not my intention to destroy trees. So in the event that there's a situation where we have a road opening permit or we have something like that, driveway permit, something like that going on where there's trees involved, then obviously we would take a look at that situation and get some advice on it. I just wanted to be clear that at some point, a decision has to be made. And so, for example, if you have a development going on and there is a tree that needs to go for them to have an entrance, right? And so then I review it, and I review it with Brian and Caleb. There's no other place for them to put the entrance. Then I'm not going to kill a development necessarily to save one tree. So that's the hardest thing. I just want people to understand that. It's not a situation where I just want to go out and clear cut all the right-of-ways and destroy trees. That's not the case. But I just want people to understand that sometimes there's a hard decision that has to be made. And at this point, I'm the guy that's got to make that decision. And so I don't take it lightly that, this decision has to be made. I just don't want the Arbor Commission to think that I'm just out here whacking trees because I want to whack trees. But I have to weigh that tree against the person that's doing the development and how much I'm willing to inhibit their ability to do that development in order to save that tree. And so I would anticipate that there would obviously be communication between myself and whoever the tree warden is. But just know, like Steve's saying, it's a one-off situation each time. Like if I can look at a site and say, well, you're putting your entrance there and you're going to destroy that tree and you can very well put your entrance over here with no impact on you. You just like it better over here, we can put it over here. I can, and then I would do that. But, if there's if I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place with a developer, trying to get something done and one tree being in the way, then I gotta make a choice there, that's all.
And I don't think there's, I mean, the intention of the ordinance is not actually to quibble about the one tree and nor is it because we think that you're out there cutting down all the trees. But there are some developments in Ellsworth that have been really clear-cut, and I think a lot of that is just because there hasn't been a tree warden, there hasn't been involvement of the Arbor Commission connected to the planning board. It just hasn't been a priority, which is fine. I'm not blaming anybody for that, but it could be done better, where we look at a project in its whole and not to quibble about the one single tree or not to quibble about where the entrance is, but for someone to be looking out for the trees when you're making these kinds of plans. That's the whole goal.
Right.
And Caleb has been coming to Arbor Commission. He's kind of our liaison now to Arbor Commission, so that's been great. That's been helpful.
And this is not for like every house or every small development or anything. It's only those items that are going through the planning board, and that planning board process has the TRT, and that arborist will be part of that TRT. So this is most likely going to be taken care of in the normal process anyway. There might be a one-off, like you said, if the state requires you to down a whole mess of trees. I mean,
And to speak to that, if I may, I maybe I'm making that sound worse than it was, but it was all in an interest of sight distance, so the motoring public didn't have a truck coming out in front of them. And when I'm using the word tree as, they were trees, okay, but it wasn't huge trees in the right of way, but they were trees that we had to mow down with a mower that I hired to mow the ditch. And I guess every tree has value to it, and I get that. And maybe if there was something that said, hey, if you had to mow down 4 spruce trees in the state's right of way, maybe you have to plant 4 spruce trees on your land or something. I'm not against that. I don't know how that works, but I just hate to bog the process down over sight distance.
I mean, I think Michelle made a good point, which is with the arborist being part of the TOT, then some of the stuff can get hashed out through the approval process.
Yeah, it's really more to inform, and let.
Yeah.
It's not really intended to bog
And
down or to stop
Just
development.
so we're clear with what you were talking about, Steve, so if it's something like a state permit for sight distance or something, that's life safety, it's gonna,
exactly.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Good.
So I do, now that we've been having this conversation, it does raise some concerns for me. And it's not because I'm a big fan of trees, because I am a big fan of trees, and I agree completely with, maintaining them for all the reasons we've discussed. But as I read through Article 5, I do get concerned. So it says a permit is secured in advance from the tree warden for any activity related to public trees and landscaping plans on public property. You can read that to mean that public properties, all property owned, leased, or occupied by the city of Ellsworth. So I think you can, I understand the spirit and the intent here, but I think if you read the plain language, it reads that anytime you want to, if, there was pretty much any kind of cutting would need a permit, but then it doesn't, I'm not sure what the permit requirements are. As specifications and standards, ANSI contract specifications and pruning standards for shade trees shall be followed. But that's not what you would apply here.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, so, the more we talk about this, I think we need more clarity before I feel confident voting to approve this. Because, so what is the permit? What are the standards of the permit? In what context do the permit, are they required? And then, there, as to this conversation, there should be certain exceptions in situations where if it's a matter of life safety, sight distance, we don't have the authority to supersede a federal state requirement. So again, in the intent of this, I'm all for, but I think we need to understand better what are the requirements for the permit, things of that nature. So if I'm coming into Ellsworth and, I'm gonna, build a new residential development and these standards apply, I think we just need more specificity. Otherwise, I think we all understand what we're trying to get at, but it's not clear in here, and we could really get ourselves in some trouble.
Do you have, Mary may have something that she can add to that.
Okay, before you do, Mary, can I just ask another question real quick? So this is saying, 5.1 is saying, in advance from the tree warden, is required for any activity related to public trees and landscaping plans on public property. No one can do that without the permission from the city anyway. You can't just go on city property and do anything you want and cut down trees.
Yes,
So,
but-
so that's a requirement anyway.
Yeah,
So
but I
is that-
guess.
That's what you would mean, right?
Yeah, but also like, says city property include easements and right-of-ways
Sure.
and.
You can't just go cut down a tree anywhere in the city's right away or.
Sure, but again, what is the permit for? Does it,
Yeah, that's what I guess it's.
Yeah, am I allowed to cut the top off the tree and leave the leave it standing, or there's just, if I go to a tree warden, okay, I want to cut these trees, and they go, okay, I'm going to issue a permit, but there's no standards for the permit. A court could be like, that's void for vagueness, and that, strike down this term. Like, we need to have some kind of standards for when someone does go to get this permit, they understand, this is what will be required of me. Otherwise, just for this tree warden to be able to give out a permit, depending on, the tree warden could say, no, you can't, I don't like your plan. And then what's their recourse? Is there an appeal? Could they appeal this to?
There is an article that defines the appeal.
Right.
Where's
So
that?
there is an appeal, it's previous.
It is 3.3.
Okay, but again, so you file the appeal, but then what's the standard? The Board of Appeals is gonna review the ordinance standard and say whether or not the tree warden got it right. But there's no standard in this ordinance as far as how a tree warden decides whether or not to grant a permit.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack that a bit. So going to Article 3, 3.1 defines the responsibilities of the tree warden, which is to oversee all work on public trees, including assessment and removal of public hazards, and works with the Arbor Commission to enforce and administer the provisions of this ordinance. So the ordinance is about protection of trees. So anything that the Arbor Commission, that the tree warden does is in the line of their work as defined in number 3. So the tree warden, in accordance with that work, issues permits which are relating to, as it says, for any activity related to public trees and landscaping plans on public property. So if the tree warden deems that whatever is proposed is acceptable in terms of the protection of trees, or public good in terms of, as Steve was saying, in terms of, right-of-way to see sight lines and that sort of thing, then the tree warden acts according to that. And the permit is going to vary, whether it's cutting down trees, topping trees, pruning trees. It's going to depend on the particular need of that public right-of-way or public property. So the number 5 then requires that the applicant have Maine arborist license, which is further protection. In other words, the person knows how to do what they're proposing to do if it's approved. And they will notify in advance so that the tree warden can observe what is being done. And then there are clear exceptions here in number 5. So any tree work done on public trees by volunteers or city employees is automatically not required for a permit, and that also applies to utility companies as well. So we have clear exceptions, but it certainly applies to any individual, as Michelle was saying, who wants to take out a tree, modify a tree, prune the tree in the public right-of-way for sure, because they're not allowed to do that right now, anyway.
Yeah, no, and that's very helpful. But again, the concern I have is that, you know, you find a very qualified tree warden that has this knowledge about trees and everything and planting and hazards, but there's no standard that then is applied. It just basically.
NSI the standard?
I don't know. Is that the standard?
That's what it says in number 6, the ANSI standards. These are standards that are used by cities and communities across the
So
country.
so this is saying the ANSI contract specifications and pruning standards for shade trees shall be followed.
Right.
But does that mean, so that, is there a standard in there that says when you're going to cut in a, you know, a certain area, let's use the road entrance example. Like, is there language in there that says, oh, for road entrances, you know, X happens, or, you know, so here's an example. The Maine Shoreline Zoning Act that every town has to apply has a very prescriptive section about what trees can be removed, how many can be removed, how much can be removed in a certain area. That's the kind of standards that if, you know, a developer or an individual that's going to, you know, apply for a permit would want to know, okay, if I'm going to cut, if I want to cut here, these are the standards I need to apply. That's the standards that, in this instance, a code enforcement officer would apply. Here, again, you know, I understand that there are these standards to apply, but I don't know what those standards mean, and I don't know if there's any measurable rubric, because I do know that a Maine court will strike down any ordinance that's too vague as to what a standard is, because if it's so vague, basically us as the legislative body are supposed to be enacting these ordinances that have standards. By enacting an ordinance that doesn't have clearly, you know, defined standards, we're illegally delegating our authority to a tree warden to basically apply what standards they see fit. And I say all this, not, again, I'm very supportive of this, and I want, you know, our trees healthy, and I want to have a good way of doing that. I just fear that as this ordinance is drafted, it's too vague, and I just don't know how, if I'm a developer, how does this even work?
So if, can I just ask Patrick a question? If Article 5, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
If Article 5 had a line in it that said, according to the standard of ANSI, do you think that would be adequate, assuming that ANSI actually does answer the questions that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so, but I'd want to, I think then I'd want to see what that is, you know, and I want to, you know.
You want like a 8,000-page document?
Well, I'd like to know what's in there, you know, and does it have to be the whole thing, or does, again, I don't know what the ANSI thing is, you know, so it's hard for me to vote on something where I have no idea what it is.
You can Google it and you can actually read it all if you want, but it is a very detailed specifications and pruning standards list. I'm not exactly sure what you're anticipating. A permit would potentially be to cut down a tree, to prune a tree, to top a tree, basically do something to a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a lot of variety in the options there. And so I'm just trying to understand, in terms of the ANSI specifications, they're quite clear on, you know, how you prune a tree and, you know, what you do with a tree. So I think the standards are sufficiently specific. That plus the fact that this whole document, the tree warden is charged not simply with, for instance, issuing permits, but also enforcing the forestry management plan, the comprehensive forestry management plan for the city, which will, I think it's not finished yet, but it's running to like 50 pages. So it's going to be very specific. So the tree warden has a long list of things there that guide those decisions. And that will clearly come to this body. And I would encourage you to think about your query here with regard to that document. Is there enough in the 50 pages to be specific about what the permit would be based on. We were encouraged to make this document kind of an outline, but not to go into extensive detail, and rather put the detail into our forestry management plan. But we've relied on the ANSI document because that's kind of a national standard.
No,
So,
that all makes complete sense to me. I mean, again, there's a lot in here that, is great and does not, you could stand by itself without this permit requirement. But whenever you require a permit to be issued by a municipal body, that invokes a process where there can be, if someone, disagrees with the outcome of the permit, they trigger this appeal process, and then eventually it can go to court. And ultimately, the question a judge will ask is, okay, what rule am I applying here? And if the rule isn't clear enough, or it's not, or if it's open to interpretation what it means, a court will strike it down. So I just don't want us to enact an ordinance as it's written now that I fear is too vague on this specific issue, where I think if we could come back and have more clarity about what this all means. Because again, I don't know what any of these ANSI standards are, and basically asking me to take your word for it that this is a good one. And
Yeah, I think the missing piece here, because I was thinking through this, was that to my just general knowledge, it's already, you're not allowed to mess with public trees in the right of way or something like that. And I imagined there was already standards for that, but apparently there might not be. So if the city has to look and see what we already require for people, if they are to do work on public trees or not, and if they don't exist, fill that gap before you can have this move forward.
yeah, I think
But
so.
to my
I think,
understanding,
again,
there was already a process for determining when or how someone could work on public trees in a right of way or something like that, but I don't know that that's actually true.
Yeah, and I guess for Tabitha, I'd ask, if this ANSI, you know better than anyone here, I would imagine, but for this ANSI requirement, is that something is this what you would use to determine how, in these situations we're discussing, trees would be removed?
So I would be using ANSI in order to make sure that we've got our trees are pruned to proper specs, meaning the right cuts, and that the tree's gonna be healthy after something like that. ANSI is also used for nursery standards, so making sure that the trees that we get at the nursery are, planted correctly with the right size root ball, all of that stuff. So it's kind of a guideline to how you would prune and how you would plant, and how you would remove trees. However, this document is referencing the city forestry management plan, which will have its own set of specifically planting standards. So outside of the ANSI pruning and removal standards there, or nursery standards, and those would be the distance that you can plant a tree away from a fire hydrant, or the curb cut that we're talking about, the distance that you would plant a tree from an entrance to a building, or maybe the street intersection, kind of those kind of placement standards, and the specific trees that the city of Ellsworth is going to allow. So that's where those specifics will come in, where ANSI is kind of the me as an arborist going out and performing my duties to the national standard, right?
What about, how do you make a decision if there's some trees next to each other and I need a curb cut? How do you choose which tree, my concern is, does the tree warden get to decide, okay, you can cut this tree but not that tree, and thus you have to move your curb cut?
So can I just, I'm sorry, interject here. I think we've gone into the weeds a little bit.
To the trees?
Into the trees, yeah. We're not seeing the forest through the trees. So a couple of things. We need to define what the purpose of the permit is. So this is saying it's required, but for what? To ensure that we know when people are cutting our public trees correctly, that the arborist knows that this is happening, and to go through and be able, similar to our licensing. So I'm going to offer this if it's possible. And also, we have to decide if we're going to charge for this permit. So how about if we talk about the permit here, and if we agree there should be a permit for certain purposes, and then come back and put this permit into our permit ordinance, and then we can define it there, and we can approve that separately under that ordinance, and then we can move on with this ordinance. Unless you don't want a permit at all.
I think that we want to keep the permit process in there. As our city grows, we could find that we use it and need it, but.
It's just I think what it is, it's not the standard, I mean, we do need a standard, but I don't think it's a standard as much as the purpose for it.
Yeah.
And that's what we really need to define. And I think we can do that coming back and approving the permit and the purpose for it and the cost for it if we're going to do that. And we can do that through Sue's ordinance.
So your suggestion is take out Article 5 completely?
No. I think that it's okay. You just can't enforce it until we have defined it and we've decided if there's and the council can do that at the next meeting. And then we can still move forward with this so the Arbor Commission can move forward with your plans.
So, yeah, one thing that we keep talking about that I think concerns me greatly is the tree warden in this situation has a serious amount of authority.
Yep.
Okay, so the current suggestion would be that Caleb is going to be the tree warden, which Caleb is a highway guy. And Caleb, like, if he's going to be issuing, he's also a union guy. So if you're going to be talking about the tree warden at this level, because that's really not a liaison, that is a different level.
I don't think it has to be. I mean, it's just like,
No, and you may be right.
Yeah, I mean.
I just want to point it out.
If we look at it in a way like we do all of our other permits that we give out, it's not the person that, you just have to go and look at the project like we're going to be doing with the arborist anyway, and sign off on the permit, saying, yes, I agree with this. Just like code enforcement does, just like you do, just like everyone else does.
You're right.
And I think that's where we should go.
But the code enforcement is a department head. I'm a department head. Caleb is not a department head. And so I'm not so concerned that he won't understand how to give a permit. What I'm talking about is the fact that as a tree warden, he's going to be subject to people coming at him if they disagree with that permit.
Well,
he's going to be subject, and so I'm trying to protect him because that's not where he's at.
I know, but like the fire safety, I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Canavan.
Tom's not a department head, but that's his job, and then there's support from other people if something happens. And I would assume that this would be the same way, that, like, if he goes or someone else from the code enforcement goes and does something, there's always people to back up and to be able to advocate.
Yeah, I just,
mean,
like,
we're
if
not
Tom
that- we're not
Canavan
that
has a
strict.
requirement, Scott signs off on it, the chief.
That's not entirely true at all.
Okay,
But there's a standard that he does that. and
I'm
we're
just
back to that,
worried
but I
about my
just think-
employee. That's what I'm worried about, because I have 2 employees that are stepping into positions, and there's gonna be a learning curve for them, and
So I think that we're getting into an employee thing, and I don't think it's really appropriate for this meeting, so I think maybe,
yeah, and I just
Maybe we
want to
should
take it
table
into
this,
consideration when
to
you guys do
another
the
meeting.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna put all this responsibility on the tree warden, that person that's in that position has to make sure they're adequately equipped.
and that is a
allowed to
personnel
do.
issue, that's a personnel issue, so, so let's not go there.
Before there's a motion to table, because it's not debatable.
I'm not gonna make a motion
Okay,
to table,
just,
I don't make
we were,
motions.
there was momentum building here. If we're going to set this aside for more information, I want specifically what we're asking from the Arbor Commission. I've I looked up the ANSI. I think what we need to know is, it is the industry standard, but I can't read it because it's $80 to buy it. So, nor do I need to read it because, what do I know? What I need to know is it the industry standard? Have we described it correctly? Like it should be the most current, or just ANSI standard is enough? And then it was interesting to see, addressing the concerns about the permit. Can that be done elsewhere? Is it the permit ordinance section? And if so, should it be referenced in here? So those are like two specific pieces
Yeah.
that we need to come back to.
I personally don't have any worries with this saying that there has to be a permit. And then it, just like everything else, other ordinances say that there must be a permit, a marijuana one, all of them.
Okay.
And then, but the standard for that permit and the purpose of that standard, of that
Yeah,
permit is in the permit ordinance.
that makes great sense, I think. So I'm still looking at, if we're tabling it, what specific charge are we giving to the Arbor Commission to come back to us with?
Or can we approve with the condition that that clause, including the permit, is explained later in the permit ordinances, or does that?
Right.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry, Joe.
Can we approve with the condition that that 5.1 clause is explained later in the city's permit ordinance?
It's gotta be approved, it should be approved by us, but, yeah, I mean, we can approve this with, and just say a permit cannot be, provided, I guess, and, until because we haven't made the decision on what it is. But that's up to the council.
And then
If that's
one
what
more
we're hung
piece
up
of lack of clarity that I've seen, if we're looking, depending on how we move forward, but we kept drifting into conversations about private development. And what I heard was that isn't covered here, that's under the forest management. So clarity about, is this ordinance only addressing trees on public property? And the other things, there was conversation about and I get that right-of-ways are part of it, but we were talking about a subdivision where trees were mowed, like, I don't understand that as part of this, that's the planning board conversation that we had had. So looking for that intersection of private property, how is that intersecting? Because it's a lot of the conversation tonight.
Well, I think when 7.2 existed in this document, that was trying, you guys correct me if I'm wrong about that, that was talking about the tree warden's relationship to the planning board, and we
Right.
took that out. So I think at this point, all of that's very important, but is going to be handled through
Right.
Chapter 56.
And then the permit issue needs to be handled through the permit ordinance, which makes sense. So I'm just, if there's discussion about tabling this, what are we asking them to come back with?
Personally, I'm fine with the ordinance except for the permit, and it just because there's just too many questions with it. We've taken out the private piece, and we've put the planning board under the purview of plans and those items. That has to go through the planning board for amendment before it comes back to us. But I would be okay if we pass this tonight, but we ask that you come back with clarification on the permitting process and what the purpose of the permit is for, what the standards are for, and whether or not we're going to charge for that permit. The other piece that I just would like to add is you would hire a person that would fulfill the necessity of the ordinance. You would never change an ordinance in order to hire a person.
Say that again?
If you're gonna have an arborist,
Okay.
right, you wanna hire the arborist, and I think this is where Mike was getting to, you would wanna hire an arborist that can fulfill the requirements that you have in your ordinance, not hire, not change
the
an ordinance so
ordinance to
it
meet the
fulfills
person
the
you
person
hire.
that you're thinking about as your arborist.
Yes, no, totally.
Okay.
We don't have any, that's a personnel issue. Who is the
Exactly.
tree warden? That is not our business at all. Our goal is that someone with tree knowledge is involved in the decision-making about trees. That's the only
Perfect.
thing that we care
Yeah,
about.
and that's under the purview of the city manager, so.
And so, sorry, Michelle, so you're saying if we left the language about the permits as it is, that's okay with you, knowing that then we are going to come back and clarify that for the permit ordinance? Am I
Permit
understanding that?
ordinance. Would that be, yeah.
Yeah.
And just answer, I think it's right, what standard, what are you gonna put on the permits? So if the first thing is, what's the purpose of it? What are you trying, why do you want a permit? And then, the standards or whatever it is that you're asking for in that, and then, like, again, the cost of it. And that could come back to the council and change the ordinance, and be handled through that way.
Yeah.
And you're just referring to the permit here. That also allows that if, if there's a change in the cost or a change in the permit itself, you don't have to come back for this. It comes back with all of the other permits that we take care of.
But Patrick, do you feel comfortable with that? Or can you suggest,
So-
can you suggest, because I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand what language would be adequate to it.
Yeah, well, so the concern I have is if we pass we pass it and we keep this language in there, with the understanding that it'll be addressed later, someone can still come, this could still cause some issues where someone that comes in and someone says, well, it says you need a permit, and we're like, oh, well, we're gonna figure that out later, but it still says you need a permit. I think maybe maybe I'm just missing something, which is entirely possible. And the reason I'm raising these things is I want this to succeed, and I don't want us to do something to kind of, thwart our own progress here. I still don't understand exactly, if I show up and I say I need a permit, because I'm doing this type of work in this area, we would need to see is, okay, here's the I understand we're referencing a Nancy, but like, to Nancy's point, right, like, if I'm, regular person public, and I'm trying to figure out what's required, and I have to pay $80 to even look at the standards, that's a problem.
So if we made, let's say, I'm just trying to come up so that I know when I go back to Arbor Commission what it is I'm asking them for. If we came up with an Appendix A that gave the basics of, because the real only thing this would be is, like, there's a tree on the city's right-of-way that's in front of my house, and I want to prune it or cut it or trim it or whatever, right?
Or plant a tree.
Or plant a tree in the
Or
city right
remove
of
a tree
way.
in a
Remove a
city,
tree
so
in
that's
city.
where
Or
I
remove
get
a tree.
concerned.
So
I
if
just
we
don't know
made
how you pick what tree you remove.
An appendix, or at least something that referenced a document, this is how you make those decisions.
Yes, we just need clear standards. I mean, that's, at
If
the
we
end of the day.
stapled the ANSI at the end of this,
I mean, you could, I mean, we do
if
some
we
of-
paid our $80 and we
And the
printed
city
it out.
does some of that for like specific code issues. We just reference, you have to comply with,
Plumbing,
NFPA
whatever.
101 or plumbing, whatever.
So it could be as simple as that then.
It could be, again, though, but I think we want to, you still want some clarity. Again, what is this permit for? What are the standards, that permit is going to be applied to? Tree pruning, removal, all those things. And then sometimes these big ANSI or whatever, NFPA, you don't need the whole thing, right? Then you can actually go to, only section 9 of that, these
Actually
regulations
matters.
actually apply to these situations. There's the NFPA, standards that, the city applies certain ones. So again, and then we would want those to be accessible. We got to make sure the public has access to it so they can actually get in there and know what they're supposed to be doing. That's really, again, at the end of the day, an ordinance needs to be able to have clear standards that everyone can apply and understand how they, what they are. And this doesn't have that right now, so that's my concern.
So
One
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but so that we can move on with this, is there a way that we can approve this ordinance but state that Article 3 does not pertain until,
Well, what if we removed Article 5 for
Article
now?
5, sorry.
Article 5 and just said intentionally left blank, and then it still allows for the tree warden position to be defined, the arbor commission to be set out. It allows for the protection of trees on public property, tree planting, maintenance, removal, and then the permit requirement would just be, once we figure out what that looks like, we could come back and amend this, and then if we need to amend it in concert with other
Yeah.
ordinances, it could be one comprehensive amendment. And we could add back Article 5 with specific language.
There's also no urgency to this ordinance, other than, we're all just trying to get work done that we're trying to get done.
Oh, okay.
So I guess, do you guys agree? Like, I'd rather bring it back, I'd rather get it right than get it done fast. So to me, it seems just as well for us to address these things. I think we could have a much quicker conversation next. I don't think it has to be this long, since we've answered a lot of questions, and hopefully we would have just solved some of the things. I don't know how you feel about that, Mary.
Just for clarity, though, it sounds to me from what Michelle is saying that all those details that you're asking for really don't belong in the ordinance, but will belong in the permit.
They
So-
belong somewhere, 'cause you
Yeah,
just need to
right.
have those
So
details.
I think for the information of the Arbor Commission, we just need to know what we're working on. And it sounded to me from what Michelle was saying that we're really working on a permit with guidelines, and rather than changing this document. So, because we could have gone, this started out
Many more
like,
pages
like
long.
10, at least 10 pages longer. And over consultation and whatever, we pared it down and took things out that are going to be in the forestry management plan. So I just want to know, it's a little tricky to go back to the commission and say, we've got to put 10 pages back in. But if it's the permit, then it makes sense to me that we just really define that, since that's where people are going to go to see what do I have to do, or what's the decision going to be based on, rather than this broad, general item, ordinance.
I can ask Matt, but, the general wording of needing a permit should be in this ordinance, correct? And then the standards be in the permit ordinance?
Yeah, I think that's fine, like if there was any edits to this, it would just be referencing where they would find the permit standards in chapter or whatever. But, right, I don't know if there's a benefit in passing it tonight without knowing what those standards are versus just waiting to approve them both next month
Yeah.
when you have both in front of you. I don't know if it makes too much of a difference. So I think that's just the cleanest and makes the most sense way to do it, as long as, again, like the Arbor Commission knows what they're specifically working on. So I don't think there's, besides what's already been discussed, anything that needs to change in here until you have a reference to the permit ordinance,
Okay.
that chapter. Then it's more just about editing that other ordinance instead. No, it's called something else.
I don't know what it's called.
I was like, how do I Google
Sue can help you with that.
Okay, thanks.
I don't either.
So it sounds like when we hear this again, it should have specifics about the permit requirements and how that decision gets made, what document is referenced, but also recommendation for a fee structure as well, just because it will cost us, the city, some money, and maybe an earmark of where that fee goes, if it goes back to
The tree trust.
the tree trunk.
Well,
The
be
tree-
careful.
Tree
of that. The tree trunk, yeah.
Just want to say that a lot of this is taken, people did research on other ordinances that exist in other communities, other tree ordinances. And so the permit idea is not, we haven't invented the wheel here. So it should be pretty easy for us to go to permits in other communities and simply,
Perfect.
and presumably they address your concerns. So,
Right, yeah, that
Perfect.
sounds great.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
table, I think is where we're getting at.
Do you have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table.
Is that a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Thank you for all the hard work.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
really, I feel bad now, but.
No, and I think
I think
the
it's
purpose
good.
of coming here is to talk about it. I think that's actually fine. So will you put us automatically on this next
Do you want to
agenda?
table it until, we didn't give it a time, so you can, if you
What do
need,
you think, Mary?
you can leave it open for now and then come back?
Yeah, I guess table it free form and I'll email you when we're ready. Okay, all right, thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Casey.
you.
There you go. Okay. Item 14, council order number 0, I did close the public hearing, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
But now we're
Item 14, council order number 012503, discussion and potential action on the formation of a comprehensive water protection committee and ad hoc committee, sponsored by Councilor Stein. Councilor Stein?
Hey, everybody. All right. So I brought this up very briefly during the discussion on drinking water, because it was a tad askew from that, but it had to do with drinking water. I'll just read what I've written. The goal of this committee is to work with and advise the city planner, local expert organizations, and stakeholders like Green Ellsworth and other conservation groups, as well as other relevant city departments, to develop specific protective ordinances that aim to ensure the protection of our watersheds and drinking water. These changes are to be in line with the 2025 comprehensive plan, newly ratified by the council, still pending state confirmation, I think. The committee will then recommend these changes to the council for review and possible adoption, perhaps with an additional public workshop or more prior to council action public hearing. Green Ellsworth has been working on this issue for a while. Mary Blackstone is right here. Groups, blah, 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 has been having conversations with Matt as well, I believe. Direction from the council will be needed through this process instead of, actually, apropos, instead of lengthy workshops or city council meetings that get really into the weeds and the trees like we just did. The communication with this group could be this this subcommittee or ad hoc committee, and could report back to the council when necessary. Until the ordinances are ready for full council input and approval, this will save time and allow the project to move forward. I suggest the ad hoc committee could have 1 or 2 counselors, a member of the comprehensive plan steering committee, which is now, I think, become the implementation committee, and at least 1 staff member. And the committee could identify key stakeholders and representatives of the local organization to advise. I wanted to add as well that the public departments, Public Works, Water Department have been working incredibly hard on city's infrastructure and water, and should be a part of and principal part of the conversation, as well as city code and planning, and it should be a conversation. I mean, this is complex stuff, just like the tree warden ordinance. Like, a lot of different parties are involved, and so that conversation needs to happen, and I think it can just happen a little bit more easily, comfortably, and efficiently as a small group, and then everything gets ironed out. Maybe Patrick looks at it and makes sure it's all legally buttoned up, and then brings it back to council. I had also thought it could be, and I'd love to hear what Matt has to say on this as well, a working group instead of an ad hoc committee. We created a working group for the cannabis ordinance question some months ago. The reason we did that was because we could just form it, bring in people as needed. It was made up of city board members, committee, commission members, and staff, whereas a committee may or may not need to accept applications, which is what we might want to do as well. So, anybody have any thoughts?
I think I'd like to hear from Matt on how you would like to see something like this, because, I mean, it's the planning department that does, these types of things and works with our planning board and with our standards.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a more general idea at this point in time. I mean, there are other municipalities, I don't think in Maine, correct me if I'm wrong, that have something like this, but Massachusetts has similar, or communities with similar regulations. But through the comp plan, it was made pretty clear that people don't want development around our lakes, the Great Lakes, so Green Lake, Graham Lake, or Branch Lake, not significant development. They were, vacation homes, that sort of thing, fine, but not like heavy, high impact activity. And so just replicating similar standards to where we're at Branch Lake, and maybe even refining those or improving those, and then putting them in these rural conservation areas that were suggested by the comp plan, to protect the water quality of our bodies of water that aren't our drinking water source, but still should be clean and preserved as best as the city can. So it's looking at how to improve kind of what Branch Lake has now, and then how to replicate that for other I guess most of the great ponds, I think maybe Leonard Lake would be the one that would be harder to implement it on, but Green Lake and Graham Lake as well. Keep those more rural, keep them more conserved for nature, and keep the character of those areas alive while protecting the water quality.
So if I can ask one more question, sorry. So the only thing, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, my only concern is, I don't know how to say this. Sometimes these type of working groups can go off on their own and try to create standards that may not work with the other parts of our ordinances or, land use watershed
Yeah.
ordinances and things like that. And so the only thing I would want is if they're going to do this, is if they do include you and work with you.
Oh, yeah, I think the planning department should be involved, whether it's Reggie or John Whedon from the water department. It should be, Harbor Commission, or Mary's done a lot of legwork on this already. So just different stakeholders that have this idea and think it's worth exploring, coming up with the ideas, and then eventually it comes to council with maybe it's multiple conversations of fleshed out proposals, or we're heading in a certain direction, don't know where the council wants us to keep going, and just having small conversations like that before presenting a fuller idea. But it would be a lot of staff input and then a lot of outside stakeholder input. Like Hancock County Water District would be, Soil and Water District, sorry, should have representation of some sort, like groups like that as well, so.
Agreed. Yeah, we need to keep the momentum going from the new water treatment plant and from the comp plan finishing up, and then groups like Green Ellsworth, just a lot of volunteer hours going into, Branch Lake Association as well. They've just done a ton of work, so capitalizing on that as well. Did you have a thought of a working group versus ad hoc committee? Or?
I think working group just makes sense as it will be a large staff presence and outside stakeholders, whereas ad hoc, I feel like is usually more just counselors on it, but go either way. I think if it's just a casual working group with like one or two counselors, like one or two planning board members, and then the rest staff and stakeholders, it's indifferent. You're not doing a formal process for it.
Keep it casual.
Yeah.
Are you looking for?
I guess the counselors who would like to be involved in the group.
Well, I'll be involved. I brought it to
Like John, I'm looking at you.
I may not have that much time in the next.
Yeah, I was going to say, not that you have anything else going on.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how you're gonna fit anything in there.
2 a.m.
I'll find time to email.
I will do it as much as I can, but as you know from other committees, I'm in Bangor 5 days a week. So I really have a hard time making meetings, but I wouldn't mind being kept informed, and if you need
Again, it's a
help with the
casual
council.
group, so it's wherever your expertise can be.
Yeah.
Reading things digitally and virtually and answering emails, or just sending thoughts ahead, so the group has it to work with as things are formulated is helpful, yeah.
Would you like for us to officially?
I don't even really know if you need to do a vote, but, yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's a great idea. I don't think we need a vote on anything. We've got 2 people that are willing to help.
And I'd like to be kept in the loop on it, and, I'll participate as I can.
You can attend the meetings. I'll send the information, and you can attend the meetings. How's that?
Takes a village.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's advancing the comprehensive plan, it's protecting our, these really important resources that, not just for the aesthetics and, natural value, but also have a big impact on the city's property values and, our economy. So it's these lakes, keeping them clean and beautiful, touches everything for the city, so I think it's very important.
And you must have, is John on the Green Committee? John Whedon?
He has attended our various meetings on occasion.
Because he's got such an incredible knowledge on water quality.
Mary, you brought this to my attention a couple weeks ago. Does this make sense to you? Do you have any thoughts? Feel good about it?
And the idea came from you folks. It was in the debate back in August of '23, when Councilor O'Halloran and Councilor Beal came together and said, why are we just protecting Branch Lake? How about a comprehensive water ordinance?
Brilliant.
Most things are.
If any of the
Does anyone else want to speak on this?
departments had any thoughts about this as well? No, you good?
Mike, you always have a thought. You don't have to. I mean, really.
Grace us with your.
I feel bad when I do this to speak.
I'm sure.
Not as bad as
I was gonna be quiet.
Good conversation.
No, I actually do find that it's gonna be a good idea. I've always wondered why we didn't do more with Green Lake, especially. The development on Green Lake has been increasing over the years, and the thing that affects the water most, actually happens to be some stuff that I know about, which is what comes out of septic systems and leach fields that negatively impact these streams. And even the state doesn't really have, for the wastewater, they haven't come out with official nutrient standards. So that's what you'll find when you start talking about this stuff. But nitrogen and phosphorus are the key nutrients that come out of these systems that hit our watersheds. And, you know, you have all this development that goes on Branch and all the development that goes on Green. And I know John monitors Branch, but I don't know that I don't know what he monitors on Green. But if a septic system's failing in the middle of the woods, who knows about it? That's right. And so, you know,
I said a word, not.
I would just recommend.
I'm just kidding.
I would just recommend that, you know, whoever's on the committee, make sure that they understand the impacts that they're looking at, and it's gonna be more than just, you know, land clearing and those types of impacts. It's gonna be more substantial impacts are most likely gonna come from failing septic systems and illegal discharges into the water. I knew you were gonna say that. That's why I was gonna stay quiet. So I will help as needed, but I'm not going to commit to being in the working group because I have a lot of stuff going on. Okay? So
Thank you.
it's your
Thank
fault.
you.
Thank you.
He can be a working group groupie. He just shows up.
Anything else on this item? All right, we are at item 15, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?